Before we get to today's conversation, I want to tell you about my upcoming webinar on Wednesday, January 28th, called 4 Steps to Help You Plan for Your Performance Appraisal Conversation. Performance appraisals aren't check-the-box meetings, but sadly, many managers and employees treat them as such. You can change the tone of the conversation because your professional development matters, and you have to take charge of it. As a former hiring manager, I never treated those conversations lightly. And I want to help hiring managers and employees figure out how to have a better conversation during these meetings. So in this webinar, I'm going to share with you 4 tips to help you take greater command of the conversation, whether you're talking about your promotional potential, giving and receiving better feedback, or whatever is next for your career at that organization or elsewhere. To register, make sure to visit the show notes or visit johnneral.com/webinar. You'll also see it under the services tab on my website. Now, let's get started with episode 83 of the Mid-Career GPS podcast.
Well, so once on a what's it called? Review. I was it was called a doormat.
You were called a doormat?
Yes.
Can you imagine how hard that must have been to hear? You're doing the best you can in a position, and the feedback you get is you're a doormat. There are defining moments in our careers. Sometimes those moments are exciting and celebrated. Other times, they're like a gut punch. But we're tough, resilient, and powerful human beings that can always find the lesson to be learned in any situation. And that is precisely what today's guest did. In this episode, you'll meet Jo Rathgeb, a talented marketing professional whose mid-career pivot led her to coaching, where today she's the founder of Creative Directions for Living, LLC, whose mission is to support adults through major changes and loss in their lives, careers, and relationships so they can create new meaningful directions for their lives. Currently, Jo is a professional certified coach, a certified RIM facilitator, which stands for Regenerating Images in Memory, a human design consultant, and certified end-of-life doula. Jo supports clients as they navigate through the uncertainty of major transitions. She provides clients with practical tools to empower themselves so they can use this period in their life as an intentional growth opportunity. And before becoming a professional coach, Jo engaged in a 30-year career in media marketing in New York City. Jo is a 5 times contributing author to anthology books, including Stop Overworking and Start Overflowing, 25 Ways to Transform Your Life Using Human Design, Journey to the Stage, Volumes 3 and 4, Retirement Made Easy, and Life Boost, Volume 3. Jo gives talks and workshops on visibility, confidence, stopping people-pleasing, which we're going to talk about today, letting go, and decluttering. She has a soft, gentle demeanor, and she uses her humor and pathos to engage the hearts and minds of her audience. And you will hear that throughout today's episode. This is the Mid-Career GPS podcast, and I'm your host, John Nerl. I'm here to help you find a job you love or love the job you have by using my proven 4-step formula. It's time to start building your mid-career GPS. So let's get started. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the podcast. I'm excited to introduce you to Jo Rathgeb today. We recently reconnected, but you need to know that Jo has played a significant and defining role in my career. See, when I was going through coach certification training with IPEC, the Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching, Jo was my success coach. A success coach was assigned to each student to help them figure out what they were going to do with their coaching certification. I can tell you exactly where I was and what I was doing when I was in a session with Mary Jo, and she asked me if I ever thought about pursuing a full-time coaching career. My immediate answer was no. I've got a great job, a great salary. Why would I want to leave the stability of my job and that paycheck? Well, I've said this over and over again. Life happens. And less than a year later, I left that job and here I am. So, Mary Jo, thank you. I couldn't be here without you. But a lot happened before Mary Jo found coaching, and she was my success coach. So here's what she wanted to be growing up.
What I wanted to be was an actress or a teacher. And I think that's partly because that's what my mother was, but that was what I wanted to do. The biggest problem that I had, though, was I had massive stage fright.
And while Mary Jo didn't pursue a career in acting, it was those skills that served her very well in her career.
What attracted me to being an actor growing up was that I have this ability to emote, and so it was just a way of expressing myself and getting people to react.
Getting people to emote and express their feelings, that's one thing. It's another thing to take those skills and transfer them into a leadership role.
Education-wise, I went to St. Michael's College. It was actually both my parents were professors there. They were drama professors there. And when I was in college, I was trying to decide between psychology as a major and English literature. And I ended up choosing the English literature at the time. And really, I think it was just a fascination with stories and with, characters and character analysis and things like that. And in later life, I used that in a career in marketing. And so, and I also like to joke around that, I worked at Disney for 15 years. And so I, became a cast member at Disney. And that's true. And I was, but I was always able to use my my writing and, that kind of love of using the written word in my day job, in my career. But what I really found that I loved about it was the people, working with people. And what was most satisfying about my marketing career was actually my team, growing and my people and stretching them and, helping them discover what their talents and skills were far beyond what they expected of themselves. And so that was really what I loved about what I did.
I asked Mary Jo how she was able to take all of her artistic and written talents and transfer them into a successful career in marketing and advertising.
Meaning that it's like when you're writing a proposal for an idea, right? It's you come up with a concept, you come up with an event, you come up with an idea for, something that you're going to produce on behalf of the advertiser, because I worked in marketing on the sales support for advertising, and coming up with something out of thin air, writing it up, having it sold, and then executing it was such a fulfilling process, starting from a thought and then creating something, completely magical out of it. It was really fun.
Listeners of this podcast often struggle at some point telling their stories. It's one of the reasons why I enjoy bringing these interviews to you. It's to help you get a better idea of how you can tell your career story so you can generate the interest you need to create your next advancement opportunity. I asked Mary Jo what she believed is the biggest thing holding people back from telling their career stories.
Not having a full understanding of like your potential and, your skills and assets and what you're really able to bring to the table. And if people rely on, I'm going to say like one thing, that they do well and that they think that their entire career is going to need to go that way, they're limiting themselves without really realizing it.
Telling your story can't be all fluff. You need something more to ground your story from that place of value and service.
Well, certainly having the opportunity to do something and have results. If you are able to say, this is what I did, this is what I produced, this is, the results that we got, then you're able to be more matter of fact and factual about it. So it's not bragging about, I am the best thing since sliced bread. It's more about like, hey, I was given the opportunity to lead this project. And not only did we get it done in time, but we also got it done under budget. And we were able to bring in all these different team members and blah, 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 and so it's like being able to turn your work into, not a story necessarily, but a piece of evidence, let's call it, that can help demonstrate what you are capable of.
As Mary Jo shared, she had a 30-year career in media marketing. Her career saw her working at Playboy, Disney, as well as other marketing director roles. Now, here's where Mary Jo's story gets a little more interesting. Imagine being laid off 3 times, but only losing your job once.
Is when I was working at Playboy back in the 90s, long time ago. Anyway, I had actually taken a day off from work. I was one of those people that, like rarely took vacation, always worked long hours, Anyway, and so I took a day off from work to go skiing with my sister. And this was before email and cell phones. And so I went to call in the afternoon and she was like, you can't call in. And I was like, okay. She's like, you took one day off. Just take the day. So I'm like, okay, fine. And so then I come into work the next day and my boss follows me into my office, shuts the door. And he's like, you are the luckiest person I know. And I was like, really? And I said, why? And he was like, well, because I gave you the day off because I had to fire you. And I was like, really? And he said, yeah. He said, but by the end of the day, I hired you back. And I was like, okay, well, why? And he was like, well, we made an announcement to the team. And when the salespeople heard that you were laid off, they got so upset that they offered their T&E money and their entertainment budget to help keep me. And so by the end of the day, he reversed his decision and hired me back.
That was one instance of being laid off. Here's number 2.
Well, the second time was when I was at Disney, and I was at a magazine that was being sold to another company. And we, the publisher and I, it was the marketing director at the time, the publisher and I both got emails, and there was 2 different meetings that we were being sent to. And we looked at each other and we were like, oh no, this isn't good.
Those things are never good.
Well, they're never good. There's 2 different meetings, right?
Just a quick pause here. I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but Mary Jo and I shared a good laugh here because, as she mentioned, whenever there's 2 meetings going on at the same time and they both involve HR, it's typically never a good thing. I've been in that kind of situation, and whether you're laid off or retained, the situation, in my opinion, is just traumatic. Like, we can laugh about it now, but for Mary Jo and me in our respective positions, we certainly weren't laughing about it at the time.
We left to go to the meetings, and I went to the meeting where I was in the process of being laid off. So I was being told, we're moving, there's redundancy, you're not needed, you won't be moving on with the rest of the team. And I was the only one on my team not moving with the rest, so like my entire team was going and not me. Unbeknownst to me, the publisher went back to her office, called our new boss, and basically was like, "You're making a mistake. Don't do it." And so then after I was laid off, I got a call from the new boss who basically said, "We've changed our minds. You now, if you want, you can have, you can come. And, we're going to give you the decision because we already laid you off, but we're going to take you if you want to come still." And it was funny because I thought I was ready to be laid off, but I wasn't. And so I deliberated about it, and I decided that I was going to go with the company. And one of the reasons for that was I didn't want to always wonder whether or not I should have gone and taken that step. And if I could, succeed at another company and in a different culture and everything else like that. And so I went, and I lasted 3 years. And by the time the call came, I was homesick the third time I got laid off. And the call came and I was at home, and I just remember hearing, like in the back of my head, the Tom Petty song, "I'm free."
Yeah.
and I knew at that moment that this was like the right time. And that time the layoff stuck. And so that's when I actually left the marketing industry and pursued the coaching industry instead.
Nice. Mary Jo's mid-career moment happened when she was laid off for the third time. And this is key. She accepted the layoff. As she put it, she was free to pursue other things and opportunities. But we know that life happens. And sometimes when it does, that changes our decisions because our personal and professional lives are in such a stage of transition. You only lose your job once, but it's the last one then that really gives you the impetus or the drive to pursue coaching. Tell us what attracted you into the coaching industry.
So early in my career, I actually knew that I was going to be doing something else eventually. And actually, while I was at Disney still, I got a master's in grief counseling. And my boss let me actually, do my work schedule around it and everything else like that. And when I got the degree, I realized that wasn't exactly what I wanted to be doing. And so I talked to a professor about coaching, and she's the one who brought it up. And then I was trying to figure out what to do about it. And so I stayed in my corporate career because of some personal issues. I lost my husband at the age of 43. And so for various reasons, it was multiple reasons. It was really important for me to, keep my current job, not only for stability, but sanity, quite honestly. And so I ended up, staying in corporate America for another 8 years after he died. And so, and so in that interim time, I was really undergoing massive transition, in my own life and what I really wanted to do, and really seeking what is it that I really want to do. And I really, really, really wanted to get into a career where I was helping other people. And so, so by the time I left marketing, I knew that I wasn't going back to that. And so then with the help of a transition coach, I found the right I found the right coach training program, which was IPEC. Mm-hmm. And, then our story starts to merge.
It does. So just to recap a little bit from the intro, but you were my success coach when I was going through coach certification.
Yes.
And if it wasn't for the conversations you and I had while I was going through certification, I wouldn't have launched my business full time. You truly opened up the space for me to explore what this could be like and how to really figure all of these components out. Mm-hmm. And here I am 4 years later, still full time in my business and loving every minute of it. And I have you to thank for that in large part. So
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm beyond grateful that my path crossed with Mary Jo's. As I mentioned, I owe so much to her. Another common theme across all of my guests and listeners is that defining life or career moment that sets the stage for you creating whatever is next. For Mary Jo, seeing her husband through his life transition and passing, she knew that she needed to be there for him. And that obviously gave her more perspective on what was going to be next.
I actually was already studying that when he got sick, and then I had completed it actually when he died. And part of the reason that I hadn't made the change yet was his illness, and just life was happening.
Yeah.
And you have to make decisions about how much can you do, and how much, what's the right time? Because sometimes you can have an idea for something or a dream or whatever, and it's not necessarily the right time to do it. But in this situation, it wasn't the right time. And it also wasn't exactly the right thing either. And so, but as time went on, experiences kept piling up. So it was like, and what I guess what I really want to say is that, you spend a lot of time at work, right? Everyone spends a lot of time at work, and it becomes a place where you have a certain identity, and a lot of people really identify with their work. Some people more so than others. But for me, what happened was that became the most stable identity I had after my husband passed away.
A big part of Mary Jo's work focuses on people pleasing. And since she and I both like definitions, I asked her to define it.
I'm like you. I like definitions. And actually, I have a chapter in a book called Life Boosts where I wrote about people pleasing. And so, according to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, which is your dictionary of choice as well, right?
Yes, it is.
A people pleaser is a person who has an emotional need to please others, often at the expense of his or her own needs or desires.
Heart-centered leaders and professionals care about people. And that also means they may default to people pleasing. That has its advantages and disadvantages.
Well, I believe that we are conditioned to be people pleasers. As we're growing up, it's, the things that we get either rewarded for or recognized for, or, good job, good girl, good boy. And so you get trained to be a people pleaser, just through life. and it works when you're a kid. Sometimes for some people it's a survival mechanism. For other people, it's a way of, really feeling validated and rewarded and recognized. So it's a way of feeling loved sometimes. And so it's a really deep-rooted thing. What happens though, as an adult, and, particularly in like a work situation, when you start putting other people's needs ahead of your own, then you you can really make yourself sick. You can make yourself, just have like people can walk all over you, you don't stand up for yourself, you lose your boundaries, all those things that make it hard to be an effective communicator or leader or even team member.
Let's establish there is a difference between caring about people and being a people pleaser. One comes from a very giving place, and the other's got a whole lot of dysfunction and toxicity attached to it. Mary Jo shared previously that we have to look for evidence-based data points that help us tell our stories. Well, collecting that evidence is important when you go for your check-in meeting or your annual performance appraisal. And sometimes those meetings can be pretty harsh.
Well, so once on a, what's it called? A review, I was, it was called a doormat.
You were called a doormat?
Yes.
That was clearly a stop in your tracks moment. So what do you do when your boss says you're a doormat? You get clear on the action steps you want to take and need to take.
So I went to a training to help me be more, effective at communicating and things like that, because, they wanted me to, like, they knew that I had really good leadership skills, but that I wasn't standing up for myself or my people as effectively as they wanted me to. And so I learned how to, I find it easier. I learned how to, what's the right word? Advocate. But what was interesting about it was someone pointed out for me is that, one of the ways as a leader that you can help your team, not just by advocating for other people, but is by, rising yourself. So as you get promoted and you continue to grow, your team is going to grow because you are creating opportunities for other people. And so in your own career path and trajectory and rise, you're actually helping raise other people because you're giving them new opportunities.
Rising yourself up and finding ways to continue to grow is vital to your mid-career journey. I asked Mary Jo to share how someone can elevate their professional brand while still caring about people without being a people pleaser.
So basically, I believe that it comes down to authenticity. Mm-hmm. So being yourself and being who you really, being who you are. And so in my case, who I was as a manager, a leader, was, someone who people felt like they could come to. I would listen to them. I would, help them, but I would also stretch them. I would also challenge them. And I made it a point to try to make sure that they felt adequately challenged and stretched in their roles, and that they, were interested in what they were doing. They weren't just, pushing papers, dialing it in, phoning it in, that they really felt like they were contributing and they were challenged enough. And so I have a funny story about what happened to my department after I got laid off and actually left. Which was, there was a team of people who were reporting directly to me. And then there was another team of people reporting to someone else. And the people who had been reporting to me revolted and would not report to the other person, to the point where they had signs on their desks that were WWMJD. And so it was like, what would Mary Jo do? And I didn't know about this. I heard about it later. But They had those signs on their desks. They absolutely refused to report to the other person. And they actually had to give someone else management responsibility.
There are side effects to people pleasing. I asked Mary Jo what side effects she's seen and how to combat them.
Well, one of them is potential burnout. If you are the type of people pleaser who is constantly, taking on projects, saying, yes, I'll work late. Yes, I'll work weekends. I will take this one for the team, and always, like taking on extra work, let's say. No isn't in your vocabulary at all. That can lead to exhaustion and burnout.
We will leave a legacy when we exit this world. The older we get, the more we think about our legacy and the mark we want to leave. Just within the past few weeks, we've lost some wonderful celebrities who've touched our hearts and souls and are perfect examples of a legacy we could be so blessed to leave, like Betty White. I asked Mary Jo to talk to us about how she sees the connection between legacy and people pleasing.
That's an excellent question. I think that there is a book called The 5 Regrets of Dying, written by a hospice worker. And the name is escaping me, but the number one regret that people had was not really being true to themselves, and so if you are people pleasing in a way that is compromising your own values or compromising, your authenticity in any way, then that is the number one regret of people who are dying. The number 2 one is working too hard.
Mary Jo's career is filled with valuable lessons and learnings that she gets to share with her readers and clients today. I asked her what advice she had for you to help you build your mid-career GPS.
Make sure that the career path that you are on is the career path that you choose to be on because you really want to be. Sometimes the career path you choose, or at least you start out with, is from people pleasing. Meaning somebody said, oh, you should be an accountant or a lawyer or, whatever. And so they go to school and they get the degree, they start the career, and they're like, oh my God, why am I even doing this? And so the first thing that I would say is just check in and make sure that the career that you're actually in is one that you want to be in for yourself and not because you're actually pleasing someone else by being in it.
Listen to Mary Jo share what she's doing now and how you can connect with her, and then come back as I share with you a few thoughts to wrap up this episode.
Work life for me is, actually, it's fun. I am in the middle of an experiment right now. Let me put it to you that way.
Yeah, okay.
And so the experiment I am doing is working on things that I am really deeply passionate and interested in. And that's involving writing. So you're a multi-time published author, so you know what that's like. And just really honing in on the types of activities that are fun for me. And so I am actually coming a little full circle, not necessarily being an actress or a teacher, but getting more into writing, speaking, mentoring, all the things that I really love. Because when you talk about legacy, that's where I see me, that's where I see having that kind of an impact. So if they want to connect with me, they can go to creativedirectionsforliving.com. And, there's a book me now kind of button there. The other thing is, if they are in some kind of a reimagining their career moment, if you will, I do have a chapter in a book that is called Stop Overworking and Start Overflowing. And that's available on Amazon. So if people are interested in, how they can actually create a career for themselves with more flow and ease in it and less efforting, that's a resource for them as well.
Mary Jo, thank you so very much.
Thank you, John. This was really fun.
It was fun. All right. What I love about Mary Jo's story is that you can see how everything just flowed from one job to the next. Look, it's not every day you meet someone who did marketing for Playboy, then went to Disney, and then became an end-of-life doula. Mary Jo is a wonderful example of knowing how to transfer your skills and leveraging them into your next position. As someone who cares about people, growing teams, and leading them professionally, gracefully, and effectively, Mary Jo is a dynamic leader and person who continues to do wonderful things in her life and career, making the impact she wants. I'm excited to see what is next for her. And as my success coach, I appreciate and admire Mary Jo, and I'm glad to have had her as my guest today. Make sure to check the show notes for how to connect with Mary Jo Rathgeb and stay in touch with all she is doing. Don't forget to register for my webinar on Wednesday, January 26th at 12 p.m. Eastern, called 4 Tips to Help You Plan for Your Next Performance Appraisal Conversation. You can find the link to register in the show notes or visit johnneral.com/webinar for more information. Don't forget to follow, subscribe, share this podcast with people you know who would benefit. And if you haven't had a chance yet, kindly leave me a rating and review on your favorite platform. You are invited to join my private Facebook group, Your Mid-Career GPS, to join a wonderful community of like-minded professionals such as yourself, who are all trying to figure out whatever is next as they work towards finding a job they love or loving the job they have. And until next time, my friends, remember, you build your mid-career GPS 1 mile or 1 step at a time, and how you show up matters. Make it a great rest of your day.